How y'all feel out there?
Oh yeah.
Wanna see something that could make you sick? Stand in front of jet on the Gaza Strip. I used to take bumps from a car.
Greetings, YouTube. This is the Garage Autonomist, and welcome to The Lounge. The Black Male Privileges Checklist by Jewel Woods. Copyright Renaissance Male Project 2008. What does privilege have to do with black men? We understand some kinds of privilege. The privilege to call a black man a boy, even if that black man happens to be 60 years old or older. The privilege to drive a car and never have to worry that the police will racially profile you. Privileges that have nothing to do with what a person has earned, but rather are based entirely on who a person is or what color they are. As African Americans, we have the ability to critique and condemn these types of unearned assets because we recognize that these privileges come largely at our expense. We have also learned from social and political movements that have sought to redress these privileges and academic disciplines that have provided us with the tools to critically examine and explore them. However, there is another type of privilege, and that caused untold harm to both black men and women, but has not had the benefit of being challenged by a social and political movement within our community, nor given adequate attention within our own academic community. The privilege that I'm referring to is male privilege. Male privilege is more than just a double standard because it is based on attitudes or actions that come at the expense of women, just as white privilege comes at the expense of African Americans and other people of color. Gender double standards come at the expense of women. Given the devastating history of racism in this country, it is understandable that getting black men to identify with the concept of male privilege is not easy. For many black men, the phrase black male privilege seems like an oxymoron, three words that simply do not go together. While it is understandable that black men are hesitant or reluctant to examine the concept of male privilege, the African American community will never be able to overcome the serious issues that we face if we as black men do not confront our role in promoting and sustaining white supremacist attitudes and actions. Inviting black men and boys into a conversation about male privilege does not deny centuries of discrimination or the burden of racism that we continue to suffer from today. As long as a black man can be tasered 9 times in 14 minutes, shot at 50 times on the morning of his wedding night, or receive less callbacks for a job than a white man with a felony record, we know that racist sexism that targets black men is alive and kicking. Examining black male privilege offers black men and boys an opportunity to go beyond old arguments of personal responsibility or blaming the man, to gain a deeper level of insight into how issues of class and race are influenced by gender. Gender is one of the most important tools in the production and reproduction of power because it relies on consent and not just coercion. The items represented on the black male privileges checklist reflect aspects of black men's lives that we take for granted, which appear to be quote-unquote double standards, but in fact are male privileges that come at the expense of women in general and African American women in particular. I offer this checklist based on years of experience working with men and with the faith that we as men have far more to gain than we have to lose by challenging the privileges that we take for granted. The Black Male Privileges Checklist. Category: Leadership and Politics. 1. I don't have to choose my race over my sex in political manners. 2. When I read African American history textbooks, I will learn mainly about men. 3. When I learn about the civil rights movement and the Black Power movements, most of the leaders I will learn about will be black men. Skipping now. 14. My looks will not be the central standard by which my worth is valued by members of the opposite sex. Skipping again. Sex and sexuality. Next category. Skipping to number 16. I can believe that causing pain during sex is connected with a woman's pleasure without even asking her. 17. I have the privilege of not wanting to be a virgin, but preferring that my wife or significant other to be a virgin. Skipping again. 18. When it comes to sex, if I say no, chances are that it will not be mistaken for a yes. 19. If I am raped, no one will assume that I should have known better or suggest that my being raped had something to do with how I was dressed. 22. In general, I prefer being involved with younger women socially and sexually. 23. In general, the more sexual partners that I have, the more stature I receive among my peers. Popular culture category. Number 27. I come from a tradition of humor that is based largely on insulting and disrespecting women, especially mothers. 28. I have the privilege of not having black women dress up and play funny characters, often overweight, that are supposed to look like me for the entire nation to laugh at. 31. I can easily imagine that most of the women that appear in hip-hop videos are solely there to please men. Attitudes and ideology. I have the privilege to define black women as having an attitude without referencing the range of attitudes that black women do have. Number 40. I have the privilege of defining black women's attitudes without defining my attitudes as a black man. Number 41. I can believe that the success of the black family is dependent on returning men to their historical place within the family, rather than promoting policies that strengthen black women's independence or that provide social benefits to black children. Number 42. I have the privilege of believing that a woman cannot raise a son to be a man. Number 43. I have the privilege of believing that a woman must submit to her man. Number 45. I have the privilege of believing that feminism is anti-black. Number 46. I have the privilege of believing that the failure of the black family is due solely to the black matriarch, which doesn't exist, but that's just throwing it out there. Sorry, that's my note. I promised myself I wasn't going to break character. 47. I have the privilege of believing that household responsibilities are women's roles. Number 48. I have the privilege of believing that black women are different sexually than other women and judging them negatively based on this belief. Skipping again. Diaspora and global category. 61. And this is where it applies, so I don't want y'all cowardly hiding behind the difference between African Americans and Africans in the diaspora. 61. I have the privilege of being a part of a sex where the mutilation and the disfigurement of a woman's genitalia is used to deny her sexual sensations or to protect her virginity for males. Number 62. I have the privilege of not having rape be used as a primary tactic or tool to terrorize my sex during war and times of conflict. Category relationships. Number 78. My strength as a man is never connected with the failure of the black family, whereas the strength of black women is routinely associated with the failure of the black family. 79. If I am considering a divorce, I know that I have substantially more marriage and cohabitation options than my spouse. 80. Chances are I will be defined as a good man by things I do not do as much as what I do. If I don't beat, cheat, or lie, then I am considered a good man. In comparison, women are rarely defined as good women based on what they do not do. 81. I have the privilege of not having to assume most of the household or child care responsibilities. 85. Under the category of physical safety, I do not have to worry about being considered a traitor to my race if I call the police on a member of the opposite sex. 88. I can be courteous to a person of the opposite sex that I do not know and say hi, hello, and not fear that it will be taken as a come on or fear of being stalked because of it. 89. I can use physical violence or the threat of physical violence to get what I want when other tactics fail in a relationship. Notice that the last number was 89. This checklist consists of 94 items. I didn't want to completely read the whole thing for time reasons, obviously, but to be honest with you, I want to force you all to read the actual checklist. Now, I get to break character because I don't want to disrespect the original Arthur by adding in my own narrative and commentary. I have really not that much to add to it. Read them and read is all I got to say for those of you that have been snickering and whining and bitching and moaning and really acting like the very opposite of the so-called alpha males that you all pretend to be. You could be in denial that these things are not true all that you want. It's really about putting yourselves in the shoes of those who are disempowered at our expense as men. That's it for the list. I want you all to just read it. I have provided the link in the low bar and, come back here to this video and comment on it. Listen, I want to give a huge shout out to the executive over at FX Network who was obviously asleep at the wheel when he gave the green light to Donald Glover's Atlanta. It's very rare when I will ever give a shout out to a suited piece of shit for a mass media network for doing something like that, for rubber stamping something where I'm pretty sure in their coked out little brain, this individual was like, hey, black guy, drug selling rap, I don't want to fuck up and not greenlight something that could be the next power or empire. So I'm going to go on ahead and say yes. Little did he know that he gave the green light to a show that puts black people in a thinking space and also in an esoteric space, which is something you rarely see us being in, especially now these days when we should have been in indie film. The other times in the past where I may have given such laurels to this subspecies of human would be the executive who okayed Frank's Place at CBS and the executive who okayed Northern Exposure. Anyway, going back, this show, it's pretty obvious that I love it. I've only seen 2 episodes of it on demand, which you can find it there. The show so far is directed by Hiro Murai. He's mainly done music videos, but of course the main hero here, of course, is Donald Glover himself, writer and star of the show. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Childish Gambino. I never was. That's his rap moniker, and I still haven't even had a chance to see his stand-up. My wife and my oldest daughter, they've seen it. They love him to death. So far, what I've seen from the first 2 episodes are amazing. So you have Donald Glover, who plays Ernest, nicknamed Ern. Dude went to Princeton, but then dropped out. We still don't know why, but we'll be getting to that pretty soon. Interesting thing about him, this is an interesting thing that a lot of people don't know really about most black people and black families, especially if they come from the middle class, is that the difference between black middle class and white middle class is that, and I shouldn't say it's like this for all white middle class families, but the majority of black middle class families, you're going to have the cousin or the 2 cousins who are still going to be poor or from the working class or the permanent underclass. So there is no purely, all 3, 4, 5 of your cousins are all of the same social class. It happens. It's very rare though. So the idea that Ernest, who obviously, and even then you could tell they're more like lower middle class. I would guess his father's probably retired postal worker or something. Well, I don't know. Who knows? But you can see that from what we see in the show so far, he was at least able to attend Princeton. We don't know why he dropped out. It's not unheard of to still have that cousin who is still struggling. And in this case, his cousin Brian Tyree Henry plays Paperboy, the rapper. The basic plot that Ern wants to be Paperboy's manager. Right now, Ern, being a Princeton dropout, I think he's a salesman or something like that. I really don't want to give too much of this show away. So there was a scene that deals with the word nigger and how educated African Americans who have gone to school with of white people, and then those white people feeling they were comfortable enough to be able to use the N-word, because it's not just being able to be comfortable enough to use the N-word around quote unquote street black people, but feeling comfortable enough to being able to say the N-word around quote unquote harmless black people. But Ern pulls something that shows that he's not one of these coonish ass kissers just because he went to Princeton with a white dude. Matter of fact, he shows that the educated African American can also be smart and dangerous as well. Rounding out the ensemble cast would be Keith Stanfield, who plays Darius, Paperboy's right-hand man, best friend, and there's Zazie Beetz, who plays Vanessa, Ernest's ex, and actually they're friends and mother of Ern's daughter. We still have not been able to explore too much, or at least the 2 episodes that I have not seen yet. I have not seen too much about their relationship. We know that they're living together because Ernest has no place to stay. And they basically are co-parenting together, a term that people in my circles love to use. But it's true. That means that they're not in a traditional committed relationship, but Ern is definitely in his daughter's life and is actually a caretaker of his daughter, just as his daughter's mother is. So I'm not really going to get into it too much. I wanted to bring up the class dynamic. I love this fucking show. If you get a chance, please watch it. Tell me what you think in the comments section. This is the Garage Autonomist.